Hello, Real Vision people. This is Sebastian Moonjava, and today we have Chad Barraford of Thorchain. He is the technical lead. So happy to have you here, Chad. I've heard so many interesting things about Thorchain. How are you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
So let's jump straight into it with let's hear a little bit about your background and how you got into crypto.
I got into crypto in 2017. I made the choice just to travel the world for a year. So I just sold everything I had and just like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to sell everything and just travel the world for a whole year. And in that travels, I met these two guys who were big ETH heads. They were like big fans of Ethereum and Bitcoin and all these things. And they were to tell me all about like cryptocurrency. And I was like kind of sucking up whatever knowledge I could get from those guys. And so I was really fascinated by the technology of it, being an engineer myself. And I said, well, if you really want to understand something, the best thing to do is actually build it yourself from scratch. You know, that's a great way to learn, like, how does this blockchain thing like really function and work? And so I kind of built like an academic sandbox of types of trying to build like a chat application on a blockchain just for giggles, just for fun. And then once I got through that process, it took me a few weeks to hack together something loose and, you know, something semi-functional. I realized that this is one of the most important technologies of the century. This can restructure societies in ways that nobody could have dreamed before. And I was like, wow, this is such amazing, and it's so immature. It's such like a little infant, newborn baby that just needs so much attention and love, and to help it mature to something that the whole world can adopt and use. And I just decided to dedicate myself to this.
So how did you stumble into the Thorchain project?
Yeah, I went to a hackathon in Berlin in mid 2019. I was actually going there for a job interview. They were like, "Hey, we want a new CTO for this company. We want to test you out. So let's get in this hackathon and just see how you code, whatever." It was a Cosmos hackathon in Berlin. And at the time, actually, I'd never used Cosmos or even heard of Cosmos at that time. So I read the documentation the day before, and then I showed up the day the day of the hackathon, and me and this other guy just hacked for a while. And those were the very first lines of Thorchain, actually.
That's exciting. So tell me a little bit about the decision for the Thorchain group or whatever to utilize Cosmos. Can you maybe give a little breakdown of how it's different than something like Ethereum?
So Cosmos is really makes it easier to build your own sovereign blockchain, separate from everything else in the world. Like, you can build your own blockchain with its own validator set, and which makes it such a powerful tool to help developers and empower developers to build really interesting applications. The thing with Ethereum is that it has a lot of limitations to it. Similar to, like, actually Bitcoin from a scripting perspective was very, very, very limited what you could do. It's partially what made Ethereum so successful is that the language Solidity, being Turing complete, made it much more easy and flexible to do things you could not do like natively on the Bitcoin chain. And to me, Cosmos is the same thing, just expanding it even further. There's so many things you can do on Cosmos you just reasonably cannot build on Ethereum. And this idea of what Thorchain does, it's an example of that.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about Thorchain specifically. Can you tell me, like, what is the problem that it's solving? What is Thorchain?
Thorchain is solving a really major problem within the crypto sphere. We have this problem of when you want to move your assets, like say you want to move from Bitcoin to Ethereum, the really only viable way of doing that from going to layer one, like real Bitcoin to real Ethereum, the only way you can really do that today is to go through some sort of centralized entity like a Binance or a Kraken or a Coinbase. And considering the ethos of like crypto, it's like, this is a ridiculous notion. Like, why do I need to go through a centralized entity to use a decentralized network? Like, It makes no sense at all. And this has actually been a very difficult problem to solve that people have been trying for many years now. And like, you know, atomic swaps, one of the earliest attempts that just didn't pan out for a whole host of reasons why that didn't work out. But Thorchain has actually the team has figured out a way of doing this in a completely decentralized way so that you can actually move your Bitcoin to Ethereum, to Litecoin, to Binance, to whatever it is in your heart's desire in a completely decentralized way, where it's censorship resistant. You don't need to ask for permission. In fact, the only requirement of the system to move your Bitcoin to Ethereum, for example, the only requirement is that you can make a Bitcoin signature. That's it. You don't need to sign up. You don't need to give an email address. You don't need to download a specific wallet necessarily. All that's actually required is just a simple Bitcoin signature, and then you can acquire Ethereum or Tether or whatever coin you want to acquire.
I always try to think about, competition. When I talk to new projects or I'm researching a new project, I'm like, what other project is like this or who's competing. And so you guys are using like Cosmos, right? That's the Cosmos meta chain or whatever to make Thorchain go. But it sounds like, because you're a swapping protocol, initially I would think, oh, is this a competitor to Uniswap? But then now the way that you're describing it makes it sound like this is more of a competitor to centralized exchanges. Is that how you feel as well?
Absolutely. I think they have a monopoly right now, the centralized exchanges, on being able to move from chain to chain, right? Because all these chains are like isolated little islands that have no connection or relationship to each other. And Thorchain is building a highway between these chains that's completely decentralized, right? That is huge. That is ginormous. There's still a value in, a Uniswap or a SushiSwap, supporting a long tail assets of like thousands of ERC20 tokens. Thorchain will be more like a short tail system where it's focusing on, the top 100, the top 200 assets. Now, it's not going to, support thousands of coins per se. Probably not. Up to the community to decide in the end. But there's still really a lot of value for the current DEXs we have. And I think people will continue to use them. But I think the value that we're actually proposing is you don't need to use centralized exchanges to move your assets from Bitcoin to Tether, for example.
Tell me a little bit about how does this work? Because what are the incentives, or obviously you need liquidity for this to work. Is this an AMM? Is this an automated market maker? Is that how?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then for our audience, can you explain a little bit about what that means, how that works?
Yeah, so this is an AMM, automated market maker, as you were saying. Effectively, what that means is people can provide liquidity into these pools of the network, right? So there's a Bitcoin pool, for example, and every pool on Thorchain is comprised of two assets. One is always Rune, which is the base token or the native asset to the chain itself. And then the one is the other asset. Could be Bitcoin, could be Ethereum, could be USDC, whatever it might be. And so that's providing the counterparty to any trade. So instead of being like an order book where you're connecting this trade to this trade over here, you're actually trading peer to pool. And so you don't have to wait for a specific person to come up who wants to sell X amount of ETH at a Y price or whatever that might be. You're actually trading with the pool directly at that moment. So there's always a counterparty. There's always the ability to trade a Bitcoin to Ethereum without needing to wait for somebody else to come along to provide the other side of that deal. The pool is always there. It's continuously liquidity pool.
Great. So then can you talk to me a little bit about Rune then? What's the purpose of Rune, or the tokenomics of Rune? What does Rune do in the ecosystem? What does it do?
Probably the biggest and most important thing that it does, it does a bunch of things, but the most important thing that it does is provides the security of the network itself. It ensures that all the Bitcoin that the network holds, or the Ethereum or the Tether or whatever, the Litecoin, that it is held in a way that is secure, that nobody can steal these assets, and certainly not in a way that is economically viable. So that's the most important thing to do. And so if you were to use something that wasn't Rune, like Bitcoin, for example, or Ethereum as its base asset, it would not be viable. You cannot do it that way. The network can be hacked, it can be stolen, all the funds can be lost, and that would not be good, because you can attack the network with, let's say, $30 million and walk away with $50 million if you were to use Bitcoin as the base asset. But Rune, because its value is tied to the network, you will always lose money in the event that you do so. Spending $30 million to get $10 million on the other side of it. No one's going to do that. It doesn't make any economic sense.
Is this because it's skin in the game, right? Like that you have to prove that you have skin in the game in the network in order to transact with the network, or in order to make that work? Is that correct?
Partially, but also because if somebody were to cyber attack the network and to steal all the funds, it's just like somebody did that, they had to have bought a vast majority of Rune, with probably more than half the circulating supply of Rune, which is, would literally be billions of dollars in a literal sense. And then if you attack it, as soon as the network is attacked, it's publicly known by everybody, because the entire thing is just completely transparent. And so all of a sudden the value of Rune goes to near zero, because it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do, which is securing the assets. So the guy spent, huge, vast amounts of sums of money to buy an asset that once he hacks goes to zero. And so all the money he spent goes to zero. And meanwhile, he walks away with far less in Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the other assets. It makes no sense to actually attack the network in this way.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to like and subscribe for more crypto-related content. Also, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto.